What better way to round off a month than with a film about dragons? And that's exactly what we're going to do today, is at the channel points the quest of Sparks, we're going to review Reign of Fire, released in 2002. Reign of Fire is a post-apocalyptic science fantasy film directed by Rob Bowman. While he's directed other films, Bowman is best known for his work on television, as he's directed multiple episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation and The X-Files, for which he's received 4 Emmy nominations. This film also had a pretty loaded front cast, including Christian Bale, Matthew McConaughey, Isabella Scorupco, and Gerard Butler. As for what this film's about, basically, imagine a zombie film, except fuck zombies, let's do dragons instead. The film is set in the year 2020, and no, I'm not joking, it's like they predicted the future, where 20 years earlier in the year 2000s, dragons were unleashed upon Earth, where they destroyed almost all of humankind. There are still some humans left though, and it's a matter of can the humans take the dragons out before the dragons take them out. The film got mixed reviews from critics, but was still expected to do well, but despite its $60 million budget and its all-star cast, it only made back $82 million. This resulted in the planned sequel being cancelled and the movie being lost to time in the eyes of the general public. This movie did leave a legacy for dragon movies, however, as the mechanism of fire breath that they used was later used in the Harry Potter films and Game of Thrones. And despite the reviews and the weak box office, it seems like most of the people who do remember this movie seem to have a good impression of it. And that begs the question, was this deserving of its failure, or was it supremely underrated? Well, we're going to find out right now as we review Reign of Fire, released in 2002. So our film begins in London, England in the year 2000, where we meet young Quinn Abercrombie. Quinn goes into the London Underground to meet his mother Karen, who's a project manager on an expansion of the Underground. They've reached some kind of roadblock, however, and when Quinn goes to investigate what it is, he comes face to face with a motherfucking dragon. Quinn and Karen attempt to escape in the elevator as the dragon comes up the hole and escapes onto Earth. Quinn survives the brush with the dragon, but Karen is crushed to death. 20 years later, a now adult Quinn gives us some backstory. Apparently, scientists discovered that the dragons were the one that wiped out the dinosaurs and most life on the planet, and the ash from the event caused the first ice age, which sent the dragons into hibernation. After the dragons re-emerged in 2000s, their population grew rapidly, and finally in 2010, the world leaders used nuclear weapons, destroying most of the planet. The dragons, however, are dying as well as they're starving for food as a result of this, which has made them even more aggressive. And in the year 2020, Quinn is the leader of a survivors camp. There's trouble pretty quick though, as one of the survivors, Eddie, along with a group, are trying to go out and harvest their crops before it's ready. Quinn shuts them down, as harvesting the crops early may lead them without crops for the next season. Quinn and his best friend Creedy, who's also his right-hand man, then reenact Star Wars for the kids at the camp. However, later that night after everyone's gone to sleep, Eddie and his group go out anyway to harvest the crops. They're not out there alone for long, however, as they're ambushed by a dragon who kills one of them and encloses the rest of them in flame. Quinn and Creedy arrive to save them, however, but now all their crops are gone. And matters might be only getting worse as the next day, a bunch of armored tanks start making their way towards the castle. They're revealed to be Americans led by a man named Deaton Van Zandt. According to Van Zandt, they're some of the last military dragon hunters and are seeking refuge before they go to London. Quinn is reluctant to help them, but after seeing the tooth of a dragon that Van Zandt killed, decides to let them in. The Americans also have a helicopter piloted by Alex Jensen. Jensen leads a crew of divers who have a strategy of taking down dragons by tying them up in a net while skydiving. While Alex talks with Quinn, we also meet Quinn's basically stepson, Jared, who Quinn is grooming to be the future leader of the camp. This nice chat does not last for long, however, as the dragon that destroyed the crops is now back. The Americans quickly go on the offensive, and their strategy is pretty simple. Basically, they're using a 3D triangle mapping device to locate where the dragon is so they can skydive the nets onto it. 2/3 of the triangle are set up, but the man responsible for setting up the third vertical is killed. Quinn then quickly goes to the man's spot to set the vertical up himself. The skydivers then execute their plan and successfully throw the net on the dragon, however it breaks free and kills them all. Quinn then baits the dragon himself right to Van Zandt, who shoots it for the mouth with a missile, which kills it. The camp then celebrate that night, but Van Zandt is not exactly in a celebrating mood, considering how many men he lost. And after he buries them, him and Alex relay their master plan to Quinn. Basically, they've killed about 200 dragons, but all of them seem to be female. That's because there's only one male dragon who fertilizes all the eggs. And that one male dragon lives in London, who Quinn realizes is probably the dragon that they woke up in the first place. Despite this, Quinn refuses to help them as he believes the dragon will track them back to the camp. Van Zandt then attempts to recruit members of the camp, which enrages Quinn and leads to a physical altercation, which Van Zandt wins. Some of the camp members go with the Americans as they head out, and Jared initially plans to as well, but he backs out at the last minute. The Americans stop in the ruins of a town just 66 miles out of London, but they won't have to get to London to find the dragons as the male dragon ambushes them and kills everyone on sight except for Van Zandt and Alex. And just as Quinn predicted, the dragon then makes its way to the camp where it levels most of their castle. Quinn's able to get pretty much everybody into the bunker, but as Creedy goes up to look for stragglers, he too is killed by the dragon. Alex and Van Zandt make their way back to the camp the next day, and Vem and Quinn agree to go to London, and Quinn leaves Jake in charge of the camp. They arrive at London to see hundreds of smaller dragons, however the big boy shows up and cannibalizes one of them, leaving the others to scatter and the main dragon by himself. Van Zandt then forms a very simple and effective strategy. They're going to split up and bait the dragon into attacking so they can shoot explosive arrows down its throat. They all get into their positions, but Quinn has found that he's lost his arrow. Van Zandt has not, however, and he climbs to the top of a structure and shoots it right at the dragon, who blows it up right before it can go down its throat. Van Zandt says, "Alright, fuck you then," and dives at it with his battle axe before he's killed. Quinn and Alex then bait the dragon to ground level, and Quinn finally finds that arrow. While Alex distracts it, Quinn lines up the shot and shoots it right down the dragon's throat, which kills it. And now 3 months later, we're on the North Sea, where Quinn and Alex are erecting a radio tower. Jake arrives to tell them that he's communicated with some survivors who speak French, but Quinn tells him to deal with it since Jake is now in charge. They have not seen a dragon since they killed the male, and they hope it stays that way, as Quinn and Alex are now dedicated to rebuilding civilization. And since there was a planned sequel, it's very likely that originally this was not supposed to be the end of the dragons, but that got cancelled, so let's just say it was. So after watching this movie, I actually enjoyed it a lot, and to be honest, I'm very surprised that it didn't do well, considering A, it's a dragon movie, and dragons are awesome, and B, it's a fucking Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey movie, and even in 2002, that should have been enough to get people through the door. Its only competition at the time were Road to Perdition and Men in Black 2, both which did very well, but there was still room for this to do well, and yeah, I'm just honestly not sure what happened here. And I'm confused about the critics as well, because honestly, I liked it a lot. The acting was fantastic, that's to be expected. I liked the plot. Again, you know, survival apocalyptic movies can be boring when they're about zombies, but if you bring it, you change it up and put dragons, in my opinion, that makes it a lot more interesting. The plot was, I mean, I don't know if I can say feasible, nothing in an apocalypse movie really is, but feasible enough, I guess, for an apocalypse movie. And I thought it was great. Honestly, this is one of the more underrated films I've ever seen, and I really can't imagine why this didn't do well. It just didn't. Clearly, even the people who made it were shocked it didn't do well, and really, I think this film is a perfect example of how nothing is guaranteed. On paper, this film has everything to do well. Solid plot, it's got dragons, it's got an all-star cast, it didn't have too big a competition, but despite all that, it just didn't happen with this movie. Which is why I'm happy I got a chance to review it and hopefully bring some new eyes to it. And if you haven't seen this movie before, I would very much recommend checking it out. And thank you again, Sparks, for using your channel points on this. I appreciate it, buddy. This is probably one of the more underrated things I've ever reviewed on the channel. But that is going to do it for my review of Reign of Fire. I enjoyed it, and I hope maybe you will too in the future. We will be taking a week off next week. There will not be a movie review next week. We will be returning on Sunday, February 13th. But that is going to do it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the description down below. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting me and my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taft. This has been my review of Reign of Fire, released in 2002, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.